My wife died 3 months ago. She was taken from me in a sudden, cruel twist of fate. A car accident that left no chance for goodbyes. I alone survived the crash. What a cruel mercy. Her name was Susan, and our relationship was at its peak, you could say. She was my everything and all things considered. We were having the best time of our lives. I loved everything about her. The early mornings when she acted like a grouch because I put too much sugar in her coffee. The Saturdays we mostly spent shopping and spending way too much money. And those relaxed evenings filled with love and affection for each other. Times were hard after her death. I often thought about joining her, but I could never do it. I still had those memories of her, and I wouldn't want them to vanish with me. It all seemed hopeless until I found this book again, which was one of her presents for me last Christmas. She loved reading and was trying to get me into it. I never really paid attention to the book, as I wasn't much of a reader. I disliked reading due to my short attention span. I wasn't a guy who could stay still for too long. The book delved into time travel, the multiverse theory, and various science fiction concepts, yet it all possessed a scientific ring that piqued my curiosity. This intrigue was perhaps intensified by the fact that it was one of the last things I had of Susan that strongly reminded me of her. She herself was a naturally curious person, fitting for a physics teacher. As I turned through the pages, the book became increasingly cryptic, almost bordering on a fantasy story. One page was different. It contained a warning. The following page should only be viewed if you are really sure you want to travel to a different reality. I dismissed it as a figure of speech meant to build suspense and credibility, which it did. Undeterred, I turned the page. There was a sentence marked in red in the middle of the page, the only colored text in the entire book. It gave me an eerie feeling, looking ominous and out of the ordinary. I won't reveal what the sentence said, as its content is the very reason I'm writing this down for you. I am here so that you avoid doing the same mistake I did out of desperation. This sentence, or code if you will, is why things changed. Why I ended up facing another twist of fate that I never saw coming. I tore out the page with the sentence and stuffed it in my pocket, just like the book said on the same page. It felt kind of spiritual, but considering how my life was going, I thought, what's the worst that could happen? Believing in stuff like this hadn't hurt anyone, right? The same night I felt very motivated, and since for the last month sleeping was a very hard thing to do for me, I tried to distract myself. I did some things in the garage. I even attempted to finally finish the closet for my tools, a thing I've tried to do for a while now. Craftsmanship was just my thing, and I had lots of tools. Though being motivated, it didn't take too long until I fell asleep. It must have been about 3 a.m. when I woke up on the cold garage floor. My back hurt a lot. I can't remember laying down in the first place. Sleeping was hard for me after my wife died, but I've never once slept in the garage. As I stood up, I leaned on my tool table and accidentally dropped a wrench. I hadn't too much time to think of the weird sleeping place I chose because there was someone in the house. The very house that seemed so empty and lonely since my wife died. Shock kicked in. I was afraid to move. Someone was coming down the stairs, someone who must have heard the noise of my tool falling to the ground. I needed somewhere to go, somewhere to hide, so I squeezed myself in the empty closet of my garage. Luckily for me, I hadn't finished it, and without the shelves, there was enough space for me to hide in there. There was a split, an opening big enough for me to glance through and see the intruder. I was expecting anything, a guy with a mask and a crowbar, a confused homeless person seeking shelter, or just a drunk maniac. But oh God, was I wrong. Of all the people who could have entered my garage, it was myself. My heart started pounding crazily. Was this a nightmare? A bad joke? Or was I in a horror movie? Whatever it was, this guy, this person pretending to be me, was in my house, my property, the place my wife and I had built. I wouldn't let someone steal from me or do anything like that. With nothing left in my life to lose, I rushed out and pushed the man to the ground. Though our strengths were matched, I had the element of surprise on my side. I pinned him down and started hammering his face with the wrench I had just picked up. At that moment, nothing else mattered to me. This couldn't be real, could it? Oh boy, was I wrong. Things were about to get really messed up. I killed that man. That me. It took about 10 hits or so. I must have hit him really hard. He didn't make a sound during the brief time I became a killer. It was only afterward when I heard a familiar voice from upstairs calling, "Honey, are you okay down there?" That I paused. That was my wife's voice. I would recognize it among all the humans on this planet. Instead of questioning the reality of this illusion, this dream, I dragged the body of the man impersonating me and hid it in the closet where I had just been hiding. I hadn't much time since my wife, or this woman I was calling my wife, was coming down the stairs to check on me. I ran to the sink and washed away the blood I had on my hands with the few seconds remaining. She entered the garage and there she was, my wife Susan, who died 3 months ago. "Why won't you answer me, you idiot? You got me scared," Susan muffled. "Also, why did you change your cloth? Are you going to work on that stupid shelf now? Look at the time, Mark." She saw some bloodstains on my shirt. "Did you get hurt?" she asked. "This is the 5th time this month." Nah. There was not a thing that I cared about more right now than hugging the woman I thought I had lost forever. She was definitely surprised, but not as much as I was. I did cry, I admit it, but who wouldn't? "What's wrong, honey?" she asked, uttering the words I had longed to hear for so long. "Let's just go to sleep and talk about it tomorrow, okay?" I had just killed a man, but at that moment, I didn't care. I was simply overjoyed to see my wife. I accepted her suggestion, and we both went to sleep. Everything seemed normal, except for the fact that just a few minutes earlier, there had been another man in the house with my wife. Another man who was eerily similar to me, almost too similar. When I woke up the next day, it felt as if my life had reset to normal. Susan and I had breakfast together, just as we always did. I found myself enjoying her morning mood swings more than ever, spent even more money than usual on our shopping trip the following Saturday, and our evenings were filled with more affection than ever. One day, while Susan was at work, I finally dealt with the man impersonating me. I dug a trench and buried the body, telling Susan it was due to a burst pipe, and she believed me. Who wouldn't trust a handyman when it comes to this, especially if he's your husband? They would never look for this man. I was alive after all. Life seemed perfect, or so I thought. There was something that lingered in my mind even after burying the body. There was something in his pocket. I was searching for his wallet and such, aiming to completely assume his identity, my identity, when I found a familiar item, a torn-out page. It was the page with the sentence that led me here. Everything clicked into place. This book was the reason I ended up in this reality. But now the sentence wasn't read anymore. It had turned black, like the rest of the text in the book. It looked as though it had lost its color, as if it had lost its power to affect me or the man who had used it. I don't understand how this magic, this curse, works, and I probably never will. This man must have suffered the same fate as I did when I lost my wife. He did the same thing I did out of desperation, and he likely met the same end as many before him. This man was not exactly me, but someone who was exactly like me. Despite all this, it was difficult to sleep at night, even with my loving and, most importantly, alive wife next to me. Deep down, I knew I wasn't meant to be here. My happiness belonged to a different reality, and I should have left it that way, but I interfered with fate. Then, one night, I heard the sound of metal hitting the ground. It seemed to come from the garage. Susan didn't seem to notice. A dark suspicion crossed my mind. I put on my pants, grabbed a kitchen knife, and cautiously opened the door to the garage. It was all quiet. There was a wrench lying on the floor. Someone is definitely in the house, to be exact, in this very room. I already know where the intruder is hiding. After all, I know myself better than anyone else. After this is done, I will finally finish that goddamn closet and put shelves into it.